out.
Okay. So I guess we could today just talk about the first two,
Sounds good.
or um so
Oh,
sorry, what did you say? Okay.
oh,
What
it's
did
just
you
the feedback. This happens in the
oh,
beginning sometimes.
okay. Um yeah, so the ancient teachings from the Vedas and the Agamas acknowledge four distinct components of a soul's embodied human experience. Okay, and these are the inner image, which is the natural born inherent sense of self, the I am, the minus, like the my-ness meaning. And
So
then
is
this,
this like the small s, like your individualized self?
yes,
It's not like your identity with the soul, like larger Atman.
yes, exactly. It's the image that we carry, that, that we believe, the, that's the words, when you first understand mine, that's mine. That toy is mine, me. So well, that's why I
So
say
it's kind of
mine.
like the persona, your persona or your
Exactly,
role that you're
exactly,
playing here.
exactly. And that's what the four images of the self are. They're the totality of the persona of each being's persona, right? Not the soul, because the soul, the true self, the soul, the you is pure,
Mhm.
right? So this is when the soul comes into contact with the material reality, with the Maya, then the identification that begins. Okay, and so why do we even want to understand this? We want to understand this because when these four images of the self are not in alignment, or there's inauthenticity, then we become very split. And I'll just quickly explain. I think we just quickly go over, because it takes a while to digest what.
Yes, it's pretty deep. And you put in the book like these little esoteric secrets, and that just puts
Yes.
another like level of depth. You're like, whoa.
So we talk about, so the first, I'll just talk about the first one, which is the mamankar, uh, which is the identification of me and mine. Okay, so as I said before, mineness. So it's the sense of possession that arises from identifying objects. Like, that's my mom, that's my cat, that's my toy. Okay, experiences that are mine, relationships that are mine, and things that belong to myself. Okay, so it's the part of the self that claims ownership and derives an identity from external possessions and situations. Okay, is it? So it's our self-image. Okay, it's what we believe about ourselves, the beliefs we carry about ourselves. And what's really important about the Mamankad is it's the part of the self that believes we are smaller than our actual divine self.
Mhm. So it's
Right,
that
because
part of
divine,
us that is separate. Because as soon as we take that separation or identify with the separation, then we're in that little perspective.
exactly,
Okay.
exactly. Right, so we may have an inner image of, I mean, just very, very simply, like, I can't do that. I can't do those things. I'll never be able to do those things. I'm not smart. Or we may say, we may have the image that I'm great. Okay, it could depend. Whatever we've developed. And often this will be informed by what our external circumstance was. Not always, but very often it's a conditioning that comes from the experiences that we've had. So I don't know if there's something you could think about, like in your own life, what is something of your inner image? So we just call it simply the inner image, the Mamankar.
Mm-hmm.
Called the inner image. So what was, if you could think about something of your inner image that, could be positive or negative or whatever, something that a belief that you carry about yourself. Can you
I
think
think
of
it's,
it?
oh yeah, like, when I was growing up and I'm like 13 years old in this idea, like, oh, I'm not this enough. That would be, when you're kind of like pinning yourself up against like this ideal anything, like I'm not smart enough, I'm not skinny enough, I'm not athletic enough.
Yeah, could be anything.
I think
Yes.
that definitely would be an inner perspective, right?
Yeah, and a really a good book, I would say, and this isn't an old book. This book has been around for a long time, but a book that explains simply how our this part of ourself is formed is called The Four Images of the Self.
I've
Have you
never
read
heard of
that
it.
whole book, The Four
No.
Images of the Self? It's a great little book,
Is this
easy
is
to
this
read.
related to is this just mainstream like genre, or is it in the
Yes, I can't
Indian
remember
philosophy?
the author. He wrote a lot of books. I should I should look it up, but I can't remember his name. I think Ruiz is the name, but I want to say it was a shamanic teaching, but it really
Oh,
aligns with the.
is it Louise, the guy that wrote the Four Agreements?
Oh, yeah, it's the Four Agreements. I'm sorry. I said it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
That is a
I say
great
the
book.
Four Agreements.
I,
The
I
Four
think it was
Agreements.
like being true to your word. One was one of them,
Yes.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
that is a great book.
Yeah. So he talks about in the book how, the society begins to condition us and then we begin to believe certain things. And
Right.
this goes back to that post that we saw the other day about, where they were asking the people, women, what, or anybody, they were asking women and men, like, or whoever, excuse me, sorry. How do you feel about, they were asking adults, I'll just say, they were asking adults, how do you, if you could change one thing about yourself, how do you feel? And all of the adults were saying, oh, I changed this about myself. I changed that about myself. I hate this about myself. I hate about this. And then when they asked the children who were not yet conditioned, all the children were saying things like, oh, I would have, claws like a tiger, or I would have legs like a giraffe so I could run long distances, or whatever they were saying. None of the
Totally. They were so in touch with their creativity and like the joy of just being.
Right. So
Yeah.
their Mamakad was not yet, I would say, contaminated in a sense by the external society. They were young enough to just be in the joy of being children. So this Mamakad becomes informed and can change, as our life progresses, right?
Mhm.
A situation happens and then, someone says, oh, you're terrible at math. And then you believe I'm terrible at math. And then you have carry the belief forever that you're terrible at math. I mean,
Mhm.
very simple, right? And the Mamankara can change. We can change the inner image of ourselves. Now, the second image of the self is the Ahankara. And that's the sense that distinguishes the self from others. Okay, so it's like it's the narrative that others receive from you. So it's what you project, it's our projected image. Okay, so for example, how can we have an image of ourselves that, maybe we have a low self-esteem, for example, but that's the mamaka. The belief inside is like, I'm not good enough. But the ahankar the outer image we're projecting is, I'm so great.
Right.
Look at me. I can do this. I can do that. But inside, we feel terrible about ourselves.
Mhm.
So why is this important? Because when there's a split from how we feel inside and what we're projecting, there's a split in the persona. We are not authentically aligned and we are not in alignment.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's the part of you that's interacting with the external world. And oftentimes our inner image, our mamankar, is not aligned with our outer image, our ahankar.
Mhm.
Okay. So I don't know if you can think about something that, you might feel even really great about yourself, but project to others, oh, I'm not so, like maybe a false humility or something. It can be anything.
I mean, I could see where like this misalignment would block the flow of energy, you know? It's
Exactly.
almost like these are the points where you need the acupuncture.
Right. Right. So if in doing the introspection in the 28 days to goddess, questions we ask, it's what day is it? The eighth day is, how do I
Yes.
view myself? Okay. And
Mhm.
going deep into that, journaling, like, how do I truly view myself? How do I honestly feel about myself? And what do I truly believe about myself? What beliefs am I carrying about myself? And so there's an introspection there, and that can be pretty deep. I mean, you have to really go inside and really look, well, what do I really believe about myself?
I think when I really start to loosen the grip
Mhm.
on my smaller self, like this aspect of myself that feels separate from everyone else, that's when the image of myself, like, it expands, you know? Because then I'm not really identified with all these like small little flaws or my history,
Yeah.
things that have happened to me in the past. It's like whatever's happen's okay because I am essentially a divine being as everyone else is, as my brothers and sisters are.
Yeah.
And, and I'm continuing on this path or this journey. That's life.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, for me, I feel like loosening or aligning these images, and then when you go into the other ones, I think that kind of the work for me I saw was like really starting to see like am I identifying with who this I am is.
And what do you explain a little bit more what you're saying? Or what do you mean
Uh,
exactly?
well, I think that if I get too attached to this smaller self, like the S, that's
Yeah.
the small S,
Yeah.
then I have a tendency to, yeah, like be very limited in my view of myself
Yeah, that's a
because
good.
it's attached to this it's almost like, yeah, because the self is so vast and so, you know, the real self is all everything that you see. you know,
un, unlimited,
it's yeah,
completely.
it's so unlimited. But the minute that you really, I mean, I feel like, yeah, it's almost impossible. Well, not that it's impossible because people do it, but for me, like, I think the work for me is really to like, where do I want to identify with who I am?
Yes.
Because and for me, it's not, I don't really want to identify so strongly with, and it's not to say you negate your like history and your ethnicity and all these like beautiful things that make you uniquely you. But I think that like when I start to identify with our divinity,
Mhm.
that's when I really feel juicy. That's when I feel like things are all possible. The impossible becomes possible.
Yeah. Oh, that's so
Yeah.
beautifully said. That's so
Because
beautifully said.
otherwise, I mean, it's a real heady thing for me. It's like, oh, okay, get over this feeling of not enoughness that came when I was 9, when this thing happened, like, and then I just need like some talk therapy for 10 years. But it's like, do I really want to like have to get over all those things, or can I just identify with something greater than my
That,
limited self?
yeah,
Or,
so
I feel I'll be doing this, like this 28 days could be a lot longer.
that's amazing that what you just said, because the thing that I do want to say about this is you can just drop those images. You can complete with those images. You can just get rid of it. And that's where the real work is. Like you were saying, you can sit in talk therapy for 10 years and talk about your whatever our experience was. We can do that. And we can also just decide to drop it. I mean, it seems like, oh, how can we do this? And so this is actually a much deeper subject. Like if we get into then we're getting into the deeper Vedic and agamic, um, science. But yeah, so we could do that. And, we have to learn how to live and navigate in the body, right? So I don't know. I think like learning to balance the four images is where we can really be at a point of a flow in our life.
Mm. Hmm.
So because the outer image, we're projecting this outer image, I'm this, I'm that, I'm this, I'm that, and we may be feeling something different, and we're not aligned there. And then this goes on, then we can talk about even the other two images. And this took me a while to really digest the other two images. Because with the other two images, there's a lot of there's self-responsibility in the first two, but in the other two, there's even more responsibility, which is so when we're the anyakata, when we're identifying ourselves as separate from others, okay, we're identifying that that person's separate from me, and that identification allows for us to have relationships. The soul can have relationships because it's separateness, right? But what does this mean? It's like how others are perceiving us. Okay, what others expect from us. So for example, like our mother, we are raised by the mother, we're born from the womb of the mother, we're raised by the mother, and the mother may always see us as the child, no matter what. Even when we're 40, even when we're 50, the mother may always see us as a child. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So the thing here is we are responsible for others' perception of us.
So that was the part where I was like, wow, because then it goes back to, it goes back here.
It goes back here.
Even though it's like an projected thing and they're picking up, it's like, but they're getting those projections from what we're
Exactly. Right. Because
energetically getting through the mind.
right. Because all of us want to point the finger. It's never us. It's the other person. Right. All of us, all humans, human condition. Right.
Yeah.
So let's say, for example, someone sees us as a liar or someone who's dishonest or a cheater. We're responsible. We're responsible somewhere in our experience. We are responsible for that perception that the other's having about us. So again, this goes back to what I was saying a few minutes ago. When we're aligned, when we're really aligned with these four images, and we'll talk about the last one, which is the Swa Anyakata, which is our belief about the world, about life in general, our overall belief about what life is. Like, what do we truly believe about life? Like, life is good, or do
So that
we
last one, so my question, because the last one is also like, we're responsible, right?
Absolutely. Like we, and this is kind of, it's very
I
much
had a
in the,
question about that one.
okay, it's kind of like
Because
the law of attraction a little bit, right?
right. Yeah, so ultimately you're responsible. However, I do think it is more likely that someone's going to have, less of an opportunistic idea of the world if their upbringing was a certain way. But that doesn't mean that they won't choose like a more open path,
Mhm.
but it could really affect them. Like if you grew up in the slums, like it's going to be difficult unless maybe you meet somebody like you meet Tony Robbins and he changes your perspective, you know what I mean? But otherwise they might go through some period where they do think life is a little bleak and it's a little hard to get by.
Yes. And if you talk to anyone that's done the deep work, and there are a lot of amazing coaches and teachers out there that teach this work that came from, I mean, Tony Robbins, you brought up Tony Robbins himself. He tells the story of how his family was starving. They didn't have food. And one man came and gave him food. I think it was during a holiday, Christmas or something. And it changed his whole perspective. And look what he's become. And he's touched millions of people's lives, literally. And there are a lot of people like this that they prove that in changing the belief, in changing the belief about life, in changing the belief about the world, that's their swa anyukata
Mm.
that changes themselves, right? So it's the four parts. But it always goes back to the self, because they're the ones that change, they themselves, that image of themselves in a sense, even though it's the image of life, it belongs to them. It's their image of life that belongs to them. When they change the image of the world, their world actually changes. So that's why I was mentioning the
Law of attraction.
law of attraction, right?
Yes. So it's almost like it's taking our free will as somebody incarnated
Mhm.
and making it the most expanded positive version or choices so that we can be our most authentic self. Because when these align, it really feels authentic. If
Yes.
my inner image isn't the same as what I'm projecting myself as, then there's like a part of me that feels inauthentic.
Exactly. That is exactly, you're saying it exactly what it is. Like, so if you feel, for example, like, let's say your inner image, you feel really good about yourself, but you hate life and you believe everything is bad. There's a misalignment there,
Yeah. Yes.
right? Or others, you feel you're a really good person, a great person, but others view you as a total, jerk or whatever. Like, whatever they think you're not nice at all and you're mean. So then you have a misalignment again.
Right.
So
Because if they think that, it's most likely that it came from your actions, right?
yes,
We're leading them to believe otherwise.
right. So it always, all four of the image goes back to the self, and becoming creating an alignment between, like, someone can say, I have a lot of integrity, but their actions are not in alignment with that. So then the Anyakar, the people aren't viewing them as a person of integrity, even though they might think I have so much integrity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. So
Yes.
the work, and then this is what this work is. And that, we've spoken about this before, is the human, we're always going to be in this work of evolvement. And not to this point of perfection, but just in this flow of involvement. And this is what the divine feminine energy is. This is what is stepping into our divine feminine and stepping into our goddess being,
Mm-hmm.
is doing this work. There is a self responsibility. It's a self love, actually. Loving ourselves enough to become the most authentic, aligned being that we can be.
Mhm.
That's where we feel in, you know, when we're at that still point, and there are a lot of layers to that, but when we're at that still point, that is when we really are manifesting. We're feeling good about ourselves. We're feeling good about our life. Our relationships are good, and everything is flowing, right?
Mhm. What a
So I
dance.
know, I remember when I first came across this teaching many years ago, and it took me time to digest. And this is an ancient teaching from the Vedas and Agamas, but it took me time to digest. And then I began to really do the self work and the introspection, self introspection, and I began to see those four parts of myself and how they were playing out in my own life.
Mm.
So,
Well, thank you. Thank you for these teachings, for sharing them.
oh, I'm just a messenger. I'm just a messenger. So that, does that clarify a little bit more for you?
It does. It does. And I think, like you said, yeah, I'm digesting it. And I'm also really happy because it seems like it's ancient wisdom, and yet it's also very aligned with like the law of attraction and things like that we hear in the modern day, yeah, kind of repertoire. And
Yeah,
also it kind of is like lining up your thoughts, your words, and your actions too.
exactly.
Because
Exactly.
when those are lined up, it seems like those four identities would be more lined up, right?
Exactly. That's a really, really important point.
So maybe that's like the tool to like gauge yourself. Like, are my thoughts, are my words, and are my
Yeah.
feelings the same?
Yeah. And I think all of us have been there where like we say something, but we don't quite feel it. It's
Mhm.
a little bit, there's a misalignment within the self, right? And I think I mean, I'm just speaking for women, but I think a lot of women feel that where we say something, but we're feeling something different. And so then being able to, come into alignment with like, what is my truth? It's like with the Anyakad, it's like, it is important. That's the third one. Okay. So others' perception of of the self is like, how are others viewing me? What do others believe about me? This is a kind of, I personally found it was a harder one. Like, is there an alignment between myself and how others view me? And I definitely, like I could see where there was definitely a misalignment of in how I viewed myself, or how just how I wanted to live, and how others viewed me, right? And
Mm.
that's something that we may always work on, but in other words, do others' perception of me match my self-perception, right?
And
And like,
how would you like, would it be about asking people like how they perceive you, or how will you really know so that you're not getting the wrong perception of someone else's perception of you?
well, I think ultimately, this is not like a question that we ask. I think we would just know, for example, how we would know it. Let's just say with a close family member, say your sister always sees you as the little sister.
Mm.
And I've heard this from a lot of people where, the sibling may never view me that I've grown or I've changed, or, we may see this with friends, or, um, maybe your mother always sees you as a teenager, and that you've never grown beyond that. And she just always is stuck in this view of now. So the the process is to look inside and see, well, why is my mom still viewing me as the teenager? Or
Mhm.
why is my sibling? I mean, ultimately, we cannot control. And here we go with another the layer cake, and we get deeper in the book. This goes into the book.
That's what yeah, it is like a layer cake. It's really an onion.
It's an onion. It's like unraveling the onion, because ultimately, you know, we have to detach from the opinion of other people. And that's another piece, right? So this is why this goes back to this. This is why it's called the four images of the self, because yes, it's other people's perception of us, and we're responsible for that perception. And we can change that perception when we become aligned, when our
Mm.
four images become aligned. So
Mhm.
it's deep work. It's deep work. You know, and that last one, the Swa Anyakar, our image of the world, is like, you know, what are we carrying our beliefs about the world? Like, you know, what do I really believe about the world? Like, do I believe life is good, intrinsically good? Or am I carrying a belief that, you know, things aren't going to work out?
Mhm.
And, you know, or, you know, like, what do I presume? What, you know, do I believe humanity is good, or do I believe that, you know, life is out to get me? And, you know, and so we can change that as well. We have the power to change that belief. And yeah, so a little bit deeper, and that's day 8 and day 9 of the book of the 28 Days to Goddess. And yeah, so
Well,
did that
thank you
give you
for
some
sharing.
clarification?
That does. And it also shows me like, yeah, where I've got work to do. And it's good to remember, like you said, that this is a life process, really, because we're transforming every single moment.
Yeah, everything, every single, and instead of fighting that transformation, let's just ride with it and go with it. It's a lot easier.
Yes. And
Life
start,
is going to be continually moving anyway, right?
yes.
Yeah. And
Definitely.
so like I would say if any of this resonates with anybody who sees this video, even if one person out there watches this video, we can talk about our goddess retreats in Hawaii, our amazing
Also,
god.
I think we need to mention this book because this is where the work is coming from. Our 28-day process is from Goddess Finding Your Lost Divine Feminine.
Yeah, thank you.
Which our beautiful goddess has written. And yeah, it's available on Amazon. It's powerful. This is powerful stuff. It's deep. It's for those who aren't afraid to
Yeah,
go inside.
you have to be willing and ready to do the work. It's
Mhm.
self-responsibility, right? And we're all doing the work. You and I, we're doing the work. We're guiding women to do we're inviting women to come join us in Hawaii and do the work with us, this transformational work in an amazing, spectacular, beautiful, natural environment on the Big Island of Hawaii.
Yes, with sacred sessions. We'll be immersed in nature. We'll be doing yoga, sound healing, um, Karlakatai, which is like an ancient club. How would you say it? An ancient club
It's an ancient martial
martial art. Yeah.
practice. Yeah, and it really it balances the left and right brain hemispheres, really puts you in the it's it's still point work where we're you know, the we're really balancing both sides of the body. And
So like a moving meditation.
yeah, it's very meditative and strengthening and powerful practice. So we'll be doing that as well.
We'll be doing
uh
Hawaiian arts like lay making, walking
mhm,
barefoot.
mhm.
Um,
And take you some of the most incredible secret places too that you're not going to go if you're a tourist. You only get to go if we take you.
a really special opportunity.
Yeah. All right. So that's it for
All right.
today.
Thank
And
you,
it's
Pete.
nice meeting up with you.
We'll see
Talk
you.
to you.
Yeah, we'll see you soon.
Okay. Namaskaram.
Aloha.
Uh-huh. Bye.